My sister-in-law's planning her wedding at my house, and I'm not even invited. But on her big day, she's going to be really surprised when she finds out I changed the locks. There's not going to be a wedding here. I'm a 31-year-old woman, and I've been following this sub forever. Now I've got something in my life that I could really use some advice on. I've read so many posts about sister-in-law drama to see if anyone's been in my shoes and how they handled it. But yeah, I think my situation is one of a kind, and I could really use some input. This is about my sister-in-law, which is why I can't exactly talk to my husband about it. You know, family stuff can get messy. So here's the deal. My sister-in-law, who's 25, is planning a spring wedding. And where does she want to have it? At my house. Yup, you heard that right. Not to toot my own horn, but I've got a nice 4-bedroom house with a pool and a big garden. She's engaged to a Scottish guy, so her whole family and a bunch of relatives will need a place to stay for the wedding. We've got a spacious living room and a big garden, so she's thinking of an outdoor wedding in the garden, then dinner inside. That's her plan. Now the big question is, am I okay with this? Honestly, I have no idea. That's why I'm here, hoping for some advice. Let me fill you in on the backstory. I've been married to my husband for 7 years. We met in college and dated for about 4 or 5 years before tying the knot. My husband didn't grow up with money, but he's super hardworking and self-made. My father-in-law worked as a day laborer, and my mother-in-law took on random jobs to make ends meet. Then there's my sister-in-law. She's 25 and still living with my in-laws. Not only do they give her food and a place to stay, but they also spoil her rotten with all her ridiculous demands. And when I say ridiculous, I mean it's way beyond what they can afford. Unlike my husband, who finished his master's degree, she dropped out of college. Her parents didn't even push her to finish because, apparently, she doesn't need advice from anyone. She's all about some influencer who says college degrees aren't the key to being rich or successful. Honestly, I find it weird because I was raised the exact opposite way. Even though my family has money, we didn't get any free passes. Sure, we went to private school, which had its ups and downs, but my parents didn't do much to help with our careers. When my brother and I were in high school, my dad straight up told us to either get scholarships or take out loans because he wasn't paying for college. We used to think he was so cheap back then, and we hated it. We worked hard and earned scholarships. Looking back now, I get why Dad raised us the way he did. It made us independent. Seeing how my sister-in-law turned out, I'm even more convinced how much parents shape a person's life. When I landed my first job out of college, I went wild with parties and trips, but Dad pulled me aside and showed me some cool properties. I thought, finally, he's gonna spend some of his money on me. Nope, he wanted me to buy a house. He only covered the down payment. He broke down why owning your own home is so important, especially when you're young. He even suggested renting out half to help with the mortgage. That house is mine now, and honestly, I'm so glad I got it. Seeing how much houses cost these days, it's a relief. If I hadn't bought it back then, there's no way I'd get such a great place for that price. As for my in-laws, our relationship is fine, I guess. We don't see each other much since they live across town, and I've got a lot going on. My mother-in-law and I get along okay. We talk once a week. But my sister-in-law, she is a totally different story. We just don't vibe. She's the exact opposite of me. I tried to encourage her to finish school and get a job, but she thinks I'm jealous because her parents still support her while mine abandoned me to figure life out on my own. What really bugs me is how my in-laws say they're broke, but keep funding their 25-year-old daughter's lifestyle. My husband and I even offered to help her find an office job, but no one's interested. Not her, not my in-laws. She's lazy, plain and simple, and they let her be. Now she wants to have her wedding at my house. Of course, the space is perfect. Plenty of room for the ceremony, lunch, dinner, and even overnight guests. Plus, she can't afford a venue, and her only other option is a courthouse wedding. My in-laws aren't exactly rolling in cash either. My husband says it's my call since it's my house, and he'll back me no matter what. That's why I love him so much. But I have a dilemma. Should I let her use my house for her wedding? Update 1. The wedding's the day after tomorrow, and I just found out I'm not even invited. Yup, a wedding at my house, and I'm not on the guest list. Let me back up. I agreed to let her use the house. I was hesitant, but eventually I said yes. Now I regret it big time. I'm beyond angry, so sorry if this comes off as a rant. My sister-in-law is nothing but a user. She takes money from men in exchange for, well, you get the idea. She's not even attractive, and don't get me started on how clueless she is. But I guess some guys don't care about any of that when the lights are off. She's probably good at what she does, which is how she managed to snag this deal. She calls her fiancé the Nail. Yep, that's her nickname for him. Not only is she super shallow, but she's also a liar. Turns out, her Scottish fiancé is loaded. He's a banker, and his family's pretty wealthy too. To impress them, she lied and told them my house was hers. I knew about this lie for a while, but didn't care. It didn't impact me, so whatever. But then, when her fiancé popped the question, she practically begged me to let her use my house for the wedding. Oh, and guess what? My in-laws jumped in too, pleading with me. They said if I didn't agree, they might have to take out a loan to cover the wedding. I was like, why can't she and her fiancé handle it? My in-laws said it's tradition for the bride's family to pay for the wedding, and the Scots stick to this custom even more than we do. I don't know how legit that is, so don't blame me, just repeating what they said. To top it off, my sister-in-law already bragged to her fiancé's family about her big house that can host the wedding. Her stupidity was honestly kind of funny. I asked, what if I just say no? Don't you think she should have asked me before committing my house to her fiancé? My in-laws nodded, but begged me to save their reputation. I told them I'd do it, but maybe they should have raised her better. I don't sugarcoat stuff, so yeah, they probably think I'm arrogant. They don't get that I'm actually trying to help them out. But then they wouldn't leave me alone until I agreed. I figured, fine, it's just 2 days. How bad could it be? And no, before anyone asks, she didn't offer to pay rent. This all started 3 months ago when I made my original post. Fast forward to 2 days ago, my sister-in-law showed up with my in-laws and 2 other guys while I was at work. My home camera, which has a motion sensor, picked it up. I called her and asked what was going on. She said those guys were wedding designers doing a site visit. I told her to be careful with my stuff, and she promised she would. After paying off my mortgage last year, I stopped renting out the upstairs rooms, so I had them cleaned and prepped for her guests. It's a big house, so I even hired a cleaner to help. Then this morning at 5:30 a.m., she came over again while we were still asleep. She was heading to her bachelorette party in another city, but wanted to check if everything was ready. She seemed happy with the 2 rooms I set up and even rented a bigger dining table for their dinner tonight. But then she started walking around saying, okay, these 2 rooms are for my in-laws. Mom and Dad will take your room, and I'll stay in the one with the walk-in closet. I can't wait to show them my big house. Wait, her big house? I was so confused. Where were we supposed to go? I asked her, and she straight up said we could go stay at my parents' house or a hotel. You both make good money, you can afford it, she said so casually. I asked, why do we have to leave our own house? She smirked and said, because to them, this is my parents' house, remember? It'd be weird for you to live here. I felt my blood boiling. So you're pretending this is your parents' house, and you're the princess? She laughed it off and said no one would question it because we wouldn't be there. I asked, what about our stuff? Our photos. She said she'd just claim everything as hers and remove the hallway photos before they arrived. Then I sarcastically asked, what happens when we show up at the wedding? Won't they ask about us? Her response? Oh, I'll deal with it. I was stunned. Honestly, her audacity is unmatched. No, there's been some kind of mix-up here. They're not going to the wedding or the family dinner, not at all. I was like, what the heck? She kept going, I'm not sure how this happened, but I never invited them to the wedding. Did my parents send them an invite? I felt really dumb for even talking to her. I yelled my husband's name, who was sleeping like a rock. I yelled so loud that he jumped up and ran outside. I yelled, did you know we weren't invited to the wedding? It seemed like his body was awake, but his mind was still asleep. Whose wedding? Oh yeah, their wedding? We're not invited? Why? I said, your sister said she never sent us an invite, so how are we supposed to think we're invited? Let me just wrap my head around this. I really don't get what's going on. It took him a couple of minutes and a few repeats to understand what was happening. He was shocked that we weren't invited to a wedding that was supposed to be at our house. My sister-in-law said, well, if it bothers you that much, you can come, but maybe just say your wife is sick and can't make it. I asked her, so what was the reason we're not showing up? She had the nerve to laugh and said, oh, you won't believe this. I told them my parents cut you off because you're too toxic. I was like, wow, what else should I expect from you? I stormed off to my room, not saying anything. There was no point in talking to her anymore. My husband came after me and told me it was still up to me if I wanted to pull out. At that point, I was way too mad to think straight. I needed to calm down and think this through. So I sat down to update here, hoping it would help. And it did. I feel a lot better now. But that doesn't mean I'm giving in to the princess's demands. I'm not sure what I'll do, but there's no way I'm leaving my house to be a part of her drama. I'll update you guys no matter what happens. Update 2. Hey guys, thanks for your comments. You were all right when you said the spoiled princess is living in her own fantasy world. First, let me answer a few common questions from the comments. How did my sister-in-law get into my house when I wasn't there after I gave her the spare key for the wedding? The front porch, living room, garden, and pool area are all under cameras, so I didn't mind giving her the key. Second, how could my sister-in-law's fiancé believe her lies about the house being hers and never go to see it himself? I honestly don't know. They've been dating less than a year. 2 weeks before the wedding, she brought him over to give him a tour of my house while I was at work. After writing my update, I talked things over with my husband. Even though he was on my side, saying it was my call, I was worried that if I backed out, the wedding would be canceled and his parents' reputation would be ruined. I said, "Let's talk to your parents then." So we went to their house. We told them what my sister-in-law was doing, trying to cut us out of the wedding. Apparently, they already knew about it and seemed fine with it. My husband lost it and asked, "Did you know she was excluding us from the wedding and you're okay with it?" My mother-in-law replied quietly, "We thought you were okay with it too. None of you ever asked us why we didn't send an invite." At this point, I started to wonder if we were wrong to think we were invited to the wedding just because it was my house. My husband and I exchanged looks, both shocked. He yelled at them, "Do you realize there won't be a wedding if she changes her mind? What if we tell her in-laws the truth?" My mother-in-law freaked out and begged us not to do that. My father-in-law stepped in and asked me calmly if it would be okay to attend the wedding if my sister-in-law sent us an invite now. I didn't answer, too mad to speak. He told my mother-in-law to call my sister-in-law, have her send the invite immediately and apologize. My mother-in-law hesitated, but my father-in-law glared at her. She nervously called my sister-in-law. My father-in-law told her to put the phone on speaker. When my sister-in-law picked up, she immediately yelled at my mother-in-law for interrupting her spa day. My mother-in-law explained it was urgent, and that my father-in-law wanted her to send an invite to me and my husband. She got mad and said, "There's no way I'm inviting her. That witch thinks she's too smart." My mother-in-law tried to explain, but got cut off. My sister-in-law complained, saying if she met my in-laws, she'd steal the spotlight. "I want to be the prettiest on my wedding day." She kept ranting about me talking about business and investments, distracting everyone. "I don't want her at my wedding. It'll make me look dumb." Then she hung up. I shouted, "I'm making you sound dumb because you're a fool," and stormed out. When my husband tried to leave, my in-laws told him to calm me down and said they'd talk to my sister-in-law. Yeah, right. Meanwhile, my sister-in-law texted me, telling me to take down our photos from the hallway and move out before the wedding preparations the next day. My fiancé and his family will arrive at 10 a.m. Be gone by then, but drop my parents off before the wedding planners show up. She added that after the bachelorette party, she'd stay at a friend's house and show up to the venue like a bride. "Of course, Your Highness. I'll plan your perfect wedding." When we got home, it was late. I called a locksmith to change the locks. Later, my husband called my father-in-law and told him we wouldn't allow the wedding at our house, so they'd need to find somewhere else. He tried calling my sister-in-law, but she was busy getting drunk at her bachelorette party. My father-in-law called back, panicking, asking what to do. My husband suggested he call the guests and cancel, giving any reason, because the wedding wasn't happening there. The night was so exciting, just thinking about how my sister-in-law would react when the truth came out. At 6 a.m., the wedding designer rang the doorbell, ready to start the wedding prep. I told him this was my house and there was no wedding here. He seemed confused and said my sister-in-law and her fiancé had booked the venue for that day. I told him to call them because my house was no longer available. An hour later, my sister-in-law's fiancé showed up at my door. He asked if my sister-in-law was home since she wasn't answering her phone. I told him no, she wasn't here because this wasn't her house. He seemed confused and said, "There must be some mistake. I'm her fiancé, and we're having the wedding here today. I assume you're her sister-in-law. I saw your pictures in the hallway." I smiled and said, "You're right, I am her sister-in-law, but there's more to the story. I started with the basics. This is my house, and I live here. My sister-in-law and in-laws live across town. By the way, congrats on your wedding, but it's not happening here anymore because I changed my mind. I'm not sure what happened after that. Around 9 in the morning, my sister-in-law showed up at my door. I didn't answer. She called my husband asking what was going on, why I kicked the wedding designer out. He told her the house wasn't available and that she needed to find a new venue. She started screaming and banging on the door, demanding we open it. I opened the window and yelled at her, saying if she knocked again, she could end up in jail on her wedding day, if it even happens. She cursed at us and called us names for ruining her life. The neighbors threatened to call the cops, and that made her leave. I blocked her number, but she kept sending my husband nasty voice messages, calling him names for not standing up for her. I asked if he was upset, and he said yes, but that she brought it on herself. She can't just expect everything to be handed to her. She was rude and took us for granted. She told her fiancé that the house was hers, and started planning the wedding here without asking me. On top of that, she excluded us from the wedding and called me a witch. What did she think would happen? My in-laws weren't happy and blamed me for ruining their reputation. It made me question their values, since they were fine with their daughter excluding us, even though it was at my house. Her wedding got canceled that day. My sister-in-law and the in-laws went to beg them to wait a week so they could find a new venue. I heard her fiancé called them liars in front of everyone and said he was canceling the wedding and might rethink the whole relationship. Who knows what's going to happen now? I'm just happy to be out of the drama. I've got my own life and career to focus on. Good luck to her and her lies. Update 3. It's been a few days since my sister-in-law's wedding was supposed to happen here, and as you know, it didn't. It didn't happen anywhere because the groom called it off after finding out about her lies. Honestly, I don't blame him. If someone can lie that much, who knows what else they're hiding. What's more interesting is how everyone reacted after all the plans fell apart. My sister-in-law's been crying non-stop, and of course blaming me for everything. It's ridiculous because I wasn't the one lying to half the world. Her ex stopped by the other day to apologize, and I told him not to worry about it. He wasn't involved in this, and I even apologized for not telling him sooner. Honestly, we weren't close before. I didn't even know his name or have his number. But I felt bad and still apologized. As for my in-laws, they keep calling my husband to trash talk me. They're also mad at him for letting me control things. He's thinking of blocking them, since he's tired of it all. He doesn't answer their calls anymore, but that's between him and them, so I'm not getting involved. Update 4. It's been a week since my last update, and I was hoping that'd be the last of it, but no. She showed up again and caused a scene. It was Saturday morning, and I was just having breakfast when she knocked on my door. I knew it was her from the way she screamed, like something out of a horror movie. She said she wanted to hit me because I ruined her wedding and relationship by being a selfish bitch. My husband wasn't home. He was out playing tennis with a friend. She kept screaming and banging on the door while I just sat there drinking my coffee. A neighbor heard everything and called the cops. He came to check on me and told my sister-in-law that the police were on their way. She eventually left, but the funny part is she bolted like a thief. She didn't have a car and came by Uber, so she had no time to call another one before the cops showed up. I opened the door to talk to my neighbor, and then the police arrived. I explained everything, and since she'd threatened me, the cops went over to my in-laws' house to look for her. Later, my in-laws called my husband to yell at him about what I did, but he cut them off and blocked them. I'm sure a lot of people are curious about what happened to her, but we've had enough. Whether she ends up in jail or not, we're done with that family.